Sensei, you need to unmute.
Okay. We will now have the recitation of the Golden Chain led by Sensei Shinseki. If you would, please.
Thank you. If you please join me in Gasho. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. It is my honor and privilege to introduce today's guest speaker, Sensei Grant Asami Ikuta. Sensei Ikuta spent his childhood in Vancouver and Calgary, Canada, and Kyoto, Japan. He married in 1992 to Noriko, who was also a student at the Central Buddhist Academy, or Chubukyo Gakuin. They have 4 children, aged 28 to 17 years old. He received his undergraduate degree from the University of Alberta with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, graduating in 1987. He left to study in Japan in 1987. He attended a year at Rukkoku University Bekka, or Foreign Student Program. He received his Tokudo in the fall of 1988. In April of 1989, he then enrolled at Chubukyo Gakuin, graduating in 1990. Sensei Ikuta entered Rukkoku University postgraduate studies in April of 1990, completing the master's program in Shinshu Studies in February of 1992. He received Kyoshi ordination in May of 1990. On September 1st, 1992, Sensei was assigned to Canada as Kaikyoshi. After 3 weeks of orientation at Buddhist Churches of Canada, on April 1st, 1992, he was assigned as minister at Toronto Buddhist Church. He became the first sansei and the 3rd generation minister to serve with the BCC. From 1992 to 1996, he was associate minister at Toronto Buddhist Temple. He then became senior minister at Toronto from 1996 to 2008. While at Toronto, Sensei Ikuta led a pilgrimage of 20 individuals from Canada to the sacred sites of Shakyamuni Buddha in India and Nepal. And that was in February 2000. From 2000 to 2005, Sensei oversaw the building of a new temple in Toronto. The grand opening was in October of 2005. And almost 16 years at Toronto, he also served as chaplain at the University of Toronto and as a volunteer on-call Buddhist contact to several hospitals. He served as the chairperson for the Ministerial Association for 2 terms. In July 2008, he transferred to Steveston Buddhist Temple as resident minister. From 2011 to 2013, he served as bishop of Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada. He served as an English instructor for the Jodo Shinshu correspondence course for the past 7 years. For the past 5 years, Sensei has also served as the Ministerial Association chairperson within the JSBTC. Since 2013, along with committee members, they have been strategizing for the continuation of Steveston Temple for the next 50 years. This includes the project, the Wisteria Place Independent Senior Housing Project, which is in the midst of being constructed on the temple grounds. This senior housing will provide some financial income to allow the temple to function for many years to come. His hobbies are playing and watching sports. He is an avid basketball and hockey fan. His favorite teams being Toronto Raptors, which is basketball, and the Calgary Flames, which is hockey. He enjoys cooking as well as eating. He also has a favorite word, which I will have him explain later if he has the time. Sensei Ikuta will give a short Dharma school message followed by an adult message. I would now like to present to you Sensei Grant Ikuta. Sensei, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very in-depth introduction. It was embarrassing listening to you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting me and our members here in Canada to the Coast District Joint Gotan-E service. Now, I can't see, but there are some Dharma School students joining. Are there? I hope so. If so, maybe I can ask. Actually, I saw Mukojima Sensei's kids. Maybe I can ask one of, well, it's quite obvious with Mukojima Sensei's kids, but if there's any other Dharma School kids on, you don't have to show your face, but can you just unmute and say your name? Or am I
Nina's here. Nina.
Oh, hi, Nina.
Lily.
Lily?
From Watsonville.
Dudley and from Watsonville.
Okay. So was it Lily, did you say?
Here, say hi. Hi.
From Watsonville.
Hi.
Okay. So can I ask if any of the kids have your parents, do you know where they met? Did any of them meet through a temple function?
Nope.
Okay. How about some of your grandparents, maybe? Did they meet through the temple?
Nope.
Well, I know Nina's grandparents met through the temple.
Mine didn't. Nope.
Okay. Well, so for many of us, somewhere along the line, our ancestors may have met through the temple. And I'll get to why that's important in a bit. But first, I wanted to share with you a slideshow presentation on Shinran Shoni. Can you all see this okay on your screen? Yes?
Yes.
So, do you know who this person is, this Shinran Shoni? Who was he? So I have this little presentation. It's actually from a picture book that was produced by the Honganji, published by the Honganji. So when we go and, hey, how come I only get, oh, I know why. I'm pressing the wrong button. Sorry about that. Should be pressing this button here. Okay. So here's a picture of him when he was 9 years old. So tell me, of the Dharma School kids, you could raise your hands, who's 9 years old or over? I'm sure some of you are. Okay. Well, at the age of 9 years old, Shinran Shonin actually entered a monastery, a place called Mount Hiei, and he became a Tendai monk. And here is a picture of him getting his head shaved. Okay? So can you imagine at 9 years old leaving your house and going into a monastery full of monks? Well, Shinran did that, and he was up there for 20 years. And he was what we call a practicing monk on Mount Hiei, or Doso. But after 20 years on this mountain, he realized that wasn't the way for him to follow the teachings. So he left the mountain and he came down to a temple called Rokkakudo, where he spent 100 days thinking about what he will do in his future, how he can encounter the teachings. And it's there that it said that he had a vision telling him that he should go and seek out this person by the name of Honen Shonin. And so Shinran, at the age of 29, he goes and seeks out this Honen Shonin. And Honen Shonin, why he is important, is that he was teaching at that time a teaching called the Nembutsu teaching, the teaching of Amida Buddha. And it was a teaching that he was teaching to not just monks, not just nuns, but he was teaching it to the local people, to the farmers, to the shop clerks, to regular individuals, to ladies, to people from all walks of life. And Shinran realized this must be the true teaching. So he became a follower of Honen Shonin. But after 6 years together with Honen, what happened was there was some jealousy amongst the old schools of Buddhism. And at the age of 35, the Nembutsu teaching, Honen Shonin and his disciples, they were exiled. There were actually a couple of them that were prosecuted and even had their heads taken off. So very, very drastic measures. But Honen Shonin, Shinran's master, he was sent to a southern island called Shikoku, and Shinran, he was sent to a northern part of Japan called Echigo, part of Niigata. And then there, Shinran Shonin actually got married at the age of 35. Now, in our Jodo Shinshu school, we think nothing about our ministers being married. You know, I have hair, as some of the other senseis also have hair, and most of the senseis are married with families. But this was unheard of in Japan at that time, because ministers or monks were supposed to be in monasteries. And so Shinran Shonin broke that tradition and openly got married. And his wife's name was Eshini. Now, after spending several years in northern Japan, the exile that Shinran was on was lifted. And at the age of 39, he and his family moved to the eastern part of Japan, where he started talking to other regular people about the teachings. And he started writing many writings about the teachings. And in his 60s, he moved back to Kyoto, where he completed many of his great writings. There's another incident when he was 84, but I won't go into that. So then he passed away in his 91st year on January 16, 2063. So this is a person that lived, as Mukojima sensei said earlier, over 800 years ago. And yet to this day, we still celebrate his birthday. And then, so this person, this person here is actually a direct descendant of Shinran Shonin. He's the 25th descendant of Shinran Shonin. He's what we call the Gomonshu. He's the head of our temple organization internationally. And he, as I mentioned, is the 25th generation. Now, 25 generations, if you want to put that in perspective. So Shinran Shonin was the founder of Jodo Shinshu, but between Shinran Shonin and Gomonshi Sama now, there have been 25 generations of people. And if you calculate that, that comes out to 33,554,432 individuals. So there had to be 33,554,432 people to make sure that he came into this world from Shinan's time, okay? If any one of those 33,554,432 people were not there, then he would not be here, okay? And in your own families, so myself also, because my parents met through the temple, and without Shinran Shonin, there would be no temple, and therefore, hello, Kai, stop Googling on the screen, please. So if there were, without Shinran Shonin, I would not be here. And that's why I asked at the beginning of the service, how many of you, or if any of your either grandparents or somebody met through the temple, because it was quite common, say 30 or 40 years ago, for our members to meet through temple functions. And so without the temple, many of you may not be here today. So when we celebrate the birthday of Shinran Shonin, somebody that lived over 800 years ago, we're actually celebrating all these people who had to be in there for me to be here today, for the temple to be here today. And so for all these people and many, many more, we are expressing our gratitude. And so in our way of expressing our gratitude, we put our hands together in Gassho. So if I can ask the Dharma School kids to join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to talk to the adults for a while. And I'm going to talk mainly English, but at the end I'll say a very short talk in Japanese as well. So I'd like to begin by reading a passage. This is not your traditional passage. It's actually by a Buddhist poet. And so if I can actually please join me in Gassho. And the poem is entitled Encountering and to be in awe. People are not moved nor changed by difficult reasoning or rationalization. People are moved when they are inspired. Encountering inspiration is what causes the change. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Once again, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me and our members from Canada join in this Gotan-E celebration, a celebration of the birth of the founder of Jodo Shinshu, Shinran Shonin. The poem that I just read was actually written by a person by the name of Mitsuo Aida, who is a very famous modern Zen, lay Zen person, poet. He's passed away now, but his poems have become very popular in Japan. I actually just translated that into English, the original Japanese into English. So that's my version of the translation. But as we gather here for the Gotan-E service, celebrating Shinnan's birthday, Gotan-E always has a very special memory in my heart. In Japan, at the Honganji, on May 20th and 21st, I think it's over 2-day span, they have a lot of celebrations going on at our mother temple. If any of you have ever gone to the Honganji, you'll know that in the temple compounds, there are also other buildings or facilities that are not usually found in temple grounds. There's a place called the Shoin where they have several stages for classical Japanese performances called ono. And so on the Gotan-E service, they do several things. The actual Gotan-E service is usually what they call ongaku raihai, which means musical chanting. And they've got some of the chants, like the Jusei-ge, they actually have choirs that sing the Jusei-ge. It's very, very beautiful to go and participate. And along with that, also in these other areas, they have like these classical Japanese ono performances. And there's also a very famous pavilion called the Flying Cloud Pavilion, where they actually perform tea ceremony. So you can actually go and get tea ceremony done there as well. So why I'm sharing all this with you is that Gotan-E was actually, my wife and I, we met at the Buddhist seminary school, the Central Buddhist Academy, or Chuo Bukkyo Gakuen. And it was actually, our first date was to the Gotan-E service. Pretty square date, I would imagine, going to a service for your first date. But it's memorable for me because as part of that, we went to see this classical Japanese play. And if any of you have not or have seen Ono, you will know. For those who haven't seen Ono, the actors, they move incredibly slowly. It's a very methodical play. And unless you have the actual script in your hand, it's very hard to understand. Now, these plays can be like over an hour long. I guess it would be like our equivalent of watching Shakespeare, but it's very, very slow, more like watching sloths move, if you will. Now, so because it was our first date, I wanted to make sure that I impressed this young lady that I had taken. And so as the Japanese tradition would have it, we were sitting on tatami mats, tatami floors. And when you sit on tatami floors in Japan, you sit in the Japanese style with your legs tucked underneath you. If you've ever tried that, it's okay for maybe the first 10 minutes. And then after that, it just becomes excruciatingly painful. So there I was watching this play and thinking that I had to impress this young lady. I sat there sweating with my legs underneath me. And as such, after you're doing this for a while, I started gritting my teeth and my head went down. I was just trying to concentrate to sit in this fashion. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that my wife thought that I was sleeping through this whole thing. So here I was trying to make an impression, and in the end, I found out that she thought I was sleeping. Anyways, the reason why we gather here for the celebration, and the reason why it's so important, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's a celebration of inspiration. When we think about the fact that Shinran Shonin lived over 800 years ago, and yet today he continues to inspire millions of people throughout the world, it is truly a wonderful opportunity to gather. And speaking of inspiration, I wanted to share with you an experience of one of our members. This was still when I was in Toronto. There was a gentleman, his name, I'll just use the initial from his last name, Mr. K, who was quite a regular member at our temple. And Mr. K actually was originally from Japan, but he immigrated to Canada in the late 1960s. So our Canadian government in the late 1960s, early 1970s, they had a program, immigration program, where they were encouraging people with technical skills to immigrate from Japan. And so Mr. K was part of this wave of, we call them new immigrants here, who moved to Canada. And he was here with his family. But his parents and his siblings were back in Japan. So one day, Mr. K came to our temple, and he hadn't been around for a while, and he came to see me, and he said he just came back from Japan. His mother had passed away, and he was there until the 49th day memorial service, and he had just come back. And he said to me, interesting thing, he said, you know, I don't think I'll have the desire really to go to Japan anymore. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, well, you know, both my parents are now gone. And I said to him, well, do you have any siblings? He says, yeah, I have an older brother. And I said, well, wouldn't you want to go and see him? And he says, well, it's not the same. He said, you know, when I go home, my older brother, he has his own family, his wife and his kids. So it's nice to visit, but it's not like the same as having your parents there. And I said, oh, I think I understand your feelings. And that's when he said something very interesting. And it really struck with me, and it's been with me ever since. Mr. K said, I don't have to go to Japan, because he said, every time I put my hands together, I'm together with my parents. He said, every time I put my hands together in Gassho, I feel like I'm together with my parents. And you know, this is the inspiration that Shinran Shonin has left for all of us, is the fact that the Nembutsu teaching that Shinran shared with us is a teaching truly for all beings, and it is a teaching of simplicity. Shinran Shonin in the Tanisho, in chapter 2 of the Tanisho, is quoted as saying, as for myself, Shinran, I simply accept the words of my dear teacher Honen. Just say the Nembutsu and be saved by Amida, and entrust myself in the primal vow. Besides this, there is nothing else. So for these past 800 years, these teachings have inspired 333,532,000, whatever numbers that I mentioned. And it continues to inspire each and every one of us. I know during this course of the past year and a half, it has been a really horrible time globally with the COVID-19 pandemic. And yet, by putting our hands together, by coming together in these Zoom services, we are able to come together as one. We are able to share in the Nembutsu teaching and the teachings of Shinran Shonin. And I think as we listen to these teachings, we continue to be inspired. And as I mentioned at the poem at the beginning by Aida Mitsuo, people are not moved nor changed by difficult reasoning or rationalization. People are moved when they are inspired. Encountering inspiration is what causes the change. In our lives, we encountered the Nembutsu, which has inspired each and every one of us. And out of gratitude to Shinran Shonin, we conduct this Gotan service every year in May. So I thank you all for allowing me to join you today. And if I can ask you, please join me in Gassho as I finish the English portion, and I'll just say a few words in Japanese afterwards. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. I asked Shinseki Sensei, and he said, yes, if I can, just say a few words in Japanese, so I'd like to do so. 日本語で一言お話をさせていただきたいと思います。まず最初にご参加いただきますが、先ほど、読んだ 相田光夫さんの詩をもう一度読ませていただきたいと思います。日本語で読ませていただきたいと思います。詩の題名は、出会い、そして感動。人間を動かし、人間を変えていくものは、難しい理論や理屈じゃないんだな。感動が人間を動かし、出会いが人間を変えていくんだな。相田光夫という詩なんですが、この出会いっていうことはですね、本日はこのゴータンへ親鸞聖人の誕生日を祝ってですね、お参りをさせていただいているわけなんですが、やはりこのお参りも全てのお参りも、出会いっていうものが非常に大切だと思うわけなんですね。そこで、今日私がちょっと紹介したいのは、まあ後で、まあ、皆さんも聞いたらすぐ分かるかもしれないんですが、実はこれはもう、20年前ぐらいかな。私がまだ、トロントにいた頃なんですが、この BCA の方で、Eastern Buddhist League という、組織がありますね。この東部の仏教会の集まり。で、そこにカナダのお寺も参加してたわけなんですが、ある時シカゴでこのイースタンブルスリーグのお参りがあった時、集まりがあった時にですね、そこにある若い先生と出会いがあったわけなんです。で、その時にその若い先生が話したのが、まあ大体こういう内容だったんですが、今その先生はアメリカにいます。後で紹介しますが、その先生がアメリカ行く前に南米のブラジルに行く前だったわけなんですね。で、大学卒業してそのブラジル行く前にですね、数ヶ月の間があったらしいんです。で、その数ヶ月もしかないから別に仕事を探したわけじゃないんですね。で、毎日、寝坊したりして、それでだんだんとですね、自分のお母さんが心配になって、その朝になったら何かしなければ、した方がいいんじゃないかと、例えばその大使館、ブラジルの大使館に連絡したりして、そのビザをですね、降りるのを待ってたわけなんですよ。で、まあ、これがしばらく続くと、うるさいなとか本人が思ったらしいんですね。自分の可愛い息子が今度遠いブラジルに行くのにも早く何かして出ていけみたいな感じを感じたわけです。それがまあそのうちビザが下りてその出発の日が来てですね、みんなで空港まで見送りしてもらったというんですね、友達や家族や。で、その時にそのお母さんが手を握っていつでもしんどくなれば帰ってこいよって言ったんですね。で、それがまあ、ご存知の方もおられると思うんですが、これ向島先生の話なんですね。その向島先生が話された時ですね、これが親の本音と建前なんですね。建前はやっぱり早く社会人となって、出ていけっていう、まあ、ちゃんと貢献するようにという気持ちもあれば、本音はいつでもしんどくなれば帰ってこいよっていうのが本音。で、なぜこれを言ってるのかっていうと、私たちもこの帰ってくる場所を、まあ、私たちに教えていただいたのが親鸞聖人ですね。親鸞聖人との出会いがなければ、この念仏の教えも私たちのもとになかったわけです。その出会いを通して、やっぱり私たちもしっかりと帰る場所があると。そしてその喜びを持ってですね、やっぱりずっとこの800年の間、私たちが、やっぱり感動され、やっぱり人を変えたりされたのが、この念仏の見教えであり、本日のこのゴータンにですね、喜んでみんな共に祝っていただいているわけなんです。簡単でしたが、最後に皆さんともう一度合唱して、日本語の方は返させていただきたいと思います。 No more amigos. No more amigos. はい、どうもありがとうございました。向島先生、どうもすいませんでした。勝手にお話をして。Thank you, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sensei Ikuta, for your message. It was very inspiring for me. I was sitting here taking notes, only in the English section, of course. And this concludes today's Gotan-E service. And we thank you all for your attendance. Following this service, there will be a seminar conducted by Sensei Ikuta. We will take a 5-minute break to go 544. If you use the Japanese numbers, that will tell you what it means. Or you can grab a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you want to drink. We invite you all to come back. The theme of the seminar is Buddhist Foundation in Nembutsu Teachings. Your chairperson for this seminar will be Rinban Sakamoto. Again, thank you so much, Sensei Ikuta, and thank you all for your attendance. And if you would please join me in final Gashamidas Namanda. Thank you, everyone, and please return in 5 minutes. Bye.